Perfect. So product management skills in CXO roles. It's fascinating because everyone wants to get to a CXO role. I was thinking, how does this whole flow move? When I think, what's the life of a startup as the company evolves? What are painkillers? What are vitamins? How do you prioritize? How do you scale the communication? How do you do estimation? And then move to a summary. Hitting it hard right away because we have limited time. Don't worry about every piece. We will walk through the slide. So if you think of the life of a startup, you're typically before seed, starting with co-founders, you're bootstrapping with angels and friends and family. Then you move to a seed funding. You're raising 3 to 5 million. Your company is valued anywhere from 12 to 25 million. Almost no big VC will give you money for less than 20, 25% of the company, and they want up to 30, 35%. This phase is all about engineering co-founder and a GTM partner. So most of the stable products, stable companies will say, we are two co-founders. We've got the engineering guy and someone from the GTM side. GTM being more marketing, sales, or PM, or a PM, more technical PM factoring in the engineering, and then someone else on the sales. You're starting to talk about pilots. If you actually exit at the seed funding round, you'll often exit at 25 million. The tech stack is often mean being MongoDB, Express.js, AngularJS, Node.js. Giving you a little bit of technical stuff here, you will see that the same companies who started with mean here, as they go to Series B, Series C, run into a lot of problems. But yet it makes sense because Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node will be all JavaScript, and there's less ping pong between people, between teams, and you start to build the prototype correctly very rapidly. So the primary goal is to find the right product market fit, and then you will have more money, more people to build it out correctly. When you move to Series A, you're often raising something like a 10 million, valued anywhere from 10 to 20 million, valued anywhere 30 to 60 million. Revenue is often 1 to 2 million, almost 1 by 30 of the valuation. Starting to talk about go-to-market, how the go-to-market partner starts to take a lead. For seed funding, the VC diligence will be like, what is your coding practice? Do you have CI/CD? All those details. Here it's often, what is your plan for go-to-market? How many pilots have you been able to line up? How are you planning to scale up sales? And you start to guide a bit more of the roadmap. This seed to Series A is engineering and pilot. You haven't made serious money. It's customer segmentation, which customers you're hitting, some kind of needs prioritization, painkiller or vitamin becomes a key question. So if you look at the two industries, painkiller and vitamin, sure, you should take B complex, but it won't do much for you unless you're suffering from a deficiency of B complex. While for a painkiller, it will make your headache go away. This phase is often about a very charismatic, friendly, well-connected people, starting with scrappy, informal try-buy networks. Early adopters as customers, showing things under the hood excites the early adopter. This is about customer validation, agility, positivity, doing a few things very right. Then you hit a chasm. Often, to get to 1 to 2 million, you have 10 friends in 10 very good companies who will put in some personal time to help you. And that works well. So the better connected 10 friends will tend to do better. When you look at Series B, however, you're starting to scale this up. Revenue is no longer 1 to 10 million. Sorry, this valuation is a lot more. Exits are 150 to 300 million. you're raising 30 to 50 million, you're valued somewhere around 150 million, 120 to 200 million. But if you're exiting, you will typically get a 250 million. Here, you're starting not even, the board meetings are not even about product roadmap. It is about product pipeline, product growth, GTM. Series C is about globalizing sales. This is a chasm where you move from early adopters to the mainstream market. You move from talking to friends and close relatives, friends, etc., about your product, trying to get them to try it as a favor, to mainstream general purpose market, scaled out with a sales team, a message that grows. When you look at the internal side, you're moving from a small single site team. Often this is starting to be more microservices, more locations, because you are growing the team, you have more money, and you have to figure out how to scale communications. Suddenly it's not as easy. People were on the same floor, same building. People are on multiple floors, multiple buildings. Your good intentions don't translate as much. More of a professional manager, more structure coming in. This is a massive shift. And where does the PM fit in? Very different personality of the PM in this phase versus this phase, and we'll go through that. PM is fundamental and the glue overall, and we'll go into that in the next slide. Increasingly, this is about doing a few obvious things very rapidly with the help of an early adoption to your customer base. This is about many, many requests, very difficult decisions. Structure over agility and scaling communication, communication to the customers, communication both internal and external, everywhere. Questions here? I'll pause for a moment. Good.
Anybody? Okay. Yeah, sure.
I'll wait for a moment. Okay, we'll move forward. If you want to go back, just tell me at the end of this slide. I was thinking about an analogy of soccer. When you look at soccer, you have the goalie, you have the defense, then you have the midfield and the forwards. You'll be surprised how many very famous soccer players are actually midfielders, attacking midfielders, etc. From Diego Maradona to Pele to Michel Platini to actually Lionel Messi, Johan Cruyff, Ronaldinho, whole lot come in one of these positions. Why? These are the people who make the game, who decide the pace. They look forward to the forwards, they look at the back, they can single-handedly change from rapid through pass to score a goal to wasting time here, or even more, let's just pass it all the way back to goalie and waste some time. And those are all strategies. So these are the strategists in the game. When you look at the impact to the score of your company, anything that engineering is thinking of typically does not take effect for 9 to 12 months. They need to build it, the team needs to build it, the team needs to test it, it needs to be launched, it needs to be marketed, and then sold. Anything that GTM does is often GTM and sales. Sales is about the quarter. So this is a 3-month horizon. This is a 12-month horizon in your company. And this is often deciding how much to put in which bucket. What is the optimization horizon? Are you optimizing something for 2 years? Maybe certain tech debt should be paid off in 2 years, or should not be paid off in 2 years, but in a 20-year horizon, it should be. They start to connect across the entire spectrum. This is the reason why you will often see the product manager with almost no direct reports, or very few direct reports, become a general manager over an engineering manager who has way more reports. Because they know both the GTM and the engineering. And no one knows the complete game plan better than this PM. So it's a very, very critical, absolutely critical and key role. Questions about the first 2 slides? Okay.
I see that Ashutosh, you have raised your hand. It would be great if you can ask the question in the Q&A window, or I can unmute you. I have unmuted you. Please go ahead and speak, Ashutosh. But okay, if you don't have a question, let's go ahead.
All right, we'll keep going. Ashutosh, we'll pause again at the end of the third slide, this slide. It'll take a few minutes. So we were looking at vitamins and painkillers. These are companies I have worked for. Did someone want to unmute and speak? How a PM can manage between cross-functional stakeholders and the management in terms of priority. Okay. One sec. Cross-functional stakeholders and management. Okay, so cross-functional stakeholders is often about, say, sales, marketing versus engineering, and I think that's what you meant. Cross-functional stakeholders and the management. Is that what you meant, Pugo Subramaniam? You can even type here if you want, or I cannot see this is the Q&A window, yeah.
Yeah, Pugal Subramaniam, I have unmuted you. If you want to ask the question, please go ahead.
Okay.
You just need to unmute yourself from your end, and you can ask the question.
Exactly.
Okay, so if we are thinking of stakeholders, I think the most important stakeholder here is usually not within the company. As a company, you are one. There are two other stakeholders. You have the employees as your stakeholders. You have your customers and shareholders. So in an early stage company, when you're able to grow, you try to do right by the customer and you're growing. You're growing your freemium, you're growing your premium because a fraction of your freemium converts. When you move to, say, a stable state, you're no longer able to grow your revenue. Then you try to grow your margin. So that is about cost cutting. Obviously, when you cut costs, it'll impact the customer negatively. So that's where you're moving the balance back to the shareholder, trying to create more profitability. So you're balancing these three sides. Now, the PM usually knows what the sales, marketing, what are the market pressures, competitive lens, and also some idea of engineering. No one else knows both sides. So the ability to trade off between the two is often a function of the optimization horizon. Sometimes your entire management team will get fired if you don't make it in this quarter. Your company does not have cash to make it beyond 2 quarters. No, you cannot think long term. You have to think short term. So that context of how to balance, how badly to move one direction versus the other is very important. So I think the optimization horizon is probably the biggest single thing. And then prioritizing, are we growing freemium users? Often in consumers, we give something for free. It's bad for shareholders, but we are building it up for future. We grow the users, get the valuation, convert the users to paid, and then move to profitability within that payment. So we try to delight initially for low margin and grow. Does that make sense? You can even type here if you want. Okay, perfect. What are the titles of general managers in startups? Okay, in startups, you typically don't have that many titles. You are typically, let's go a bit back here. So if you look, there are two titles typically. GTM, sales marketing, and head of engineering, CTO. That's why you will often find this combination become the initial founding team. And over time, the GTM guy becomes the head of the startup. Now, PM can play either here if he or she is more market facing, or here if he or she is more engineering. And usually the CTO of a startup is not only technical, but understands the business and functional domain quite well. Now, in a Series A, you're starting to see the GTM leaders start to take more and more of the lead. If someone does a hiring for a Series C outside hire, not a co-founder, but an outside hire from the market, you're typically hiring sales leaders, because usually I've seen most private equities are actually not even looking. PMs with lots of sales or pure sales. So they want the ability to hit off the requirement, the needs within the quarter. That's probably the biggest. Let me look. Yeah, we are good, I think, at this point. So when we look at painkillers and vitamins, the key point is there are many good things to do. You should do daily releases. You should always experiment. You should always innovate. You should always make initial money. It's only about how to prioritize what is the true pain versus what is vitamin. So when I look at, say, I ran Google's monetization platform, that team, and it was the key point, it was about a common monetization platform across AdWords, AdSense, Checkout, and Google Apps. The key thing to do was across all payment forms, start to do fault tolerancing, multi-property billing, that is even for brand new Google properties, which Google hadn't even bought. Say YouTube, DoubleClick, these were not there at that time. And how would we onboard more products? How would we scale to more types of risk models, communicate risk? So your key things, fault tolerance. So Visa, MasterCard payments, it was bulk of Google's revenue. The growth was coming from, say, Chilean bank transfer and Thai baht. How do you de-risk it? I worked on a highly technical product, which is essentially like Hive. It was to allow querying across a vast number of Google backends. Key things was scale of AdsDB. It's very hard for anyone else to support it. We would have to support it. Pretty quickly, pretty clear, customer base was not willing to learn a language better than SQL. They wanted SQL because it's portable. This alone, if we from the engineering team did not agree, would result in the product being a failure. And when you innovate, you don't ever innovate on 100% of the product. Highly unlikely. You will do 100% of brand new innovation completely correct. You innovate on 1 to 2 things at the expense of 10 other things. And that's your trade-off, to target a specific segment much better than anyone else had done before. And that's what you try to do. So here it was the scale of AdsDB dramatically fast. Twitter was user growth, which was massively about machine learning, but also lots of things, lots of ideas don't actually work. How do we build an experimentation platform was the key factor. That was your pain. You couldn't experiment fast enough. And once you unlock that 10x or 100x, it's dramatically different. So typically, avoid a job where no big changes are needed. This is something I followed. When things are too good, under your leadership, it can only get worse. Not a great place to be. Pick something which gives you the scope because there is a pain, and it'll teach you a lot. So Flipkart, for instance, I'll give you one example which was very compelling. So Flipkart, India's still the largest e-commerce. I led engineering for Flipkart actually. One key decision was to own logistics. It became very clear in the early days that 90% of the time from when the customer placed an order to when they received the order was logistics. 70% of the money between gross and net margin is logistics. Far more important than any website improvement you can do is the person who gives you the thing in hand. So we need to control that experience. And once you figure out that as an online retailer, you're not making the product, you can only bring and take things back. That's your logistics. That's the experience you provide. You want to own it and you want to innovate there. So every business has some key things. Identifying those painkillers, identifying those key things will be absolutely critical to being successful. Okay. Slides, for the slides, Menaka has the slides. I think she will be sharing it.
Yes, sure.
Okay. Thank you, Menaka. The top skills. I think the top skill is prioritization, estimation, and metrics. Let me walk through what I mean by it. As you get higher in the chain, people typically don't ask you easy questions because someone well below you has already taken care of that. So I will almost never get a very good, easy, comfortable answer. Over time, your job becomes to make the best pick out of bad options. So I wanted to bring out a little bit of statistics and numbers, and it's helpful. Say bucketization. With thresholding, I say that these are highly opposed, these are highly supportive, these are mildly supportive, mildly opposed. That's a fine model. And I've bucketized and segmented my population. Now I can have completely different products. Obviously, you have to know that these people are highly supportive, but almost mildly supportive. These are very different people from these. And how well you hit off depends. One very interesting thing, customers always want a highly custom solution for the price of a vanilla product. No one wants to say that I want to pay you for full consulting fees, and they essentially want a highly custom solution for price of a vanilla product. Initially, as your early adopters, they're doing you a favor. You should jump and do as many as you can with some idea that this is going to be needed in the mainstream market. Remember the mainstream market? This was this chasm. You went to your friends, tried to sell your friends like a VP or a director with some spend authority, and you bring it up to 1 million or 2 million. This is by the way, I forgot to mention this. If you're raising money, it's much better to have a 12 million valuation here than a 25 million. And here's why. If you have a 12 million valuation, your seed funding investors will let you get a 30, 3x approximately, 30, 36. If you have 25, they want a 75. Now in the next round, you will have to make 1/30 of it in revenue. Most likely you have 5 to 10 friends who can help you get to 1 million. You may not have 20 friends close enough to help you get to 1 million, 2 million. So way more things go wrong. So there's charts which show that people who get off the blocks at 10 or 12 million tend to have more longevity in their company than the ones who started off with a very high valuation. That's just an interesting aside. So sounds like you got off the blocks better, you're actually worse off. Ordinal ranking, so this is segmentation. Ordinal ranking is first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. The problem with ordinal ranking is that it's fantastic. You get a P1, P2, P3 kind of picture. Actually, P1, P2, P3 is this. P1, P2, P3, P4 of some features or whatever. Here, you're starting to get ranking between the features. But you still don't know whether 1 is more important than 2 and 3 combined, or 2, 3, 4, and 5 combined. And this relentless prioritization is probably the most difficult thing. So here, if you look at Cardinal, fertility multiplier, mortality multiplier, these are numbers. And suddenly you can reason 9.75, 9.65, this is the ratio, and knowing you're measuring scale. For instance, earthquakes are measured on a logarithmic scale. And a magnitude 8 versus a magnitude 7 is dramatically different earthquakes. And understanding those, it's not just a little more, it's a lot more. So understanding the numbers, understanding the segments, estimating the market growth. This is an important line. I put it in. Good business often beats good strategy, good team, and good culture combined. So if you're able to pivot into a right market while there is growth, typically you will see less politics. So ability to pick those is important. Cardinality, numerical cardinality, enables the trade-offs, and the ability to communicate those is important. Most companies die of some weak assumption, something which makes sense as common sense, and yet is a weak assumption. The golden story that I can think of, I worked for Twitter, and Sina Weibo, which is China's Twitter, it came up that Sina Weibo is has started giving attractive members of the opposite sex as who to follow. And that's not something which was finding someone attractive by machine learning is still quite hard, and it was a lot harder in 2011. So that needed a human, and Twitter was in the US, a lot more expensive. One piece of work, which I'm very proud of to this day, there was complete chaos and pandemonium, and I was running the user growth team. One of the work that we did was, let's look at Kim Kardashian's followers and Conan O'Brien's followers. Kim Kardashian obviously has way more female followers. So bottom line, this is not a dating site. This is an interest site, Twitter. So, excuse me. So giving attractive members of the opposite gender is a pointless activity. Forget about the how, the why and the what is not that interesting. And immediately you can abandon. So if you know how to estimate from data today, whether this has a shot or not, it's a very powerful thing. De-risk onion is about de-risking first what is least in your control. So I start with what is in another company. Then I look at other locations or contracting companies or vendors, and then I look within my team or other teams. And trading off between the urgent and the important. This one is about communication and leadership. So Babe Ruth is a great baseball player. He basically used to point often to where he will hit the ball. And that becomes very inspiring. It's not that easy. However, with enough practice, it'll start to work. Keep typing in the Q&A window if there are questions, otherwise I will keep going, okay? Inspire with why. This is something which is close to my heart. As the world evolves, we lead with why, not the how. Think of when you buy a house. The more complicated thing is not the painting on the walls. It's very easy to paint the walls. It's the plumbing and the electrical. But somehow, we don't look at the plumbing and the electrical. We look at the walls, the shapes of the rooms, the big picture, and we buy or don't buy. Why? As a field matures, you start to assume that the how has been figured out. In software, in some ways, with cloud and PaaS and SaaS, a lot of the big scaling problems have been figured out. You can buy your way around money. You can buy your way around trouble with money. I'll tell you a little about a JP Morgan shoe shine boy, which was a very inspiring story to me. There was a shoe shine boy outside JP Morgan. He looked very happy every day, unusually happy compared to everyone else. One of the bankers finally asked him, "Why are you so happy? You're just shining shoes." His response was, before any banker in New York City opens his mouth to make an investment banking sale, customers first notice his shoes. I make the first impression of every sale of JP Morgan Chase in New York City. That's a dramatically more inspiring story. When you as a product manager are able to connect those dots for your teams, for your people, you get way more from the team than even you would dare to ask. Because people start to see how the little gears they move connect with bigger gears and still bigger, and are moving the boulders of the universe. Calling the shots, opening up that culture of transparency, sharing that this is what I'm doing, this is the metric I'm hoping to hit, and if it doesn't work, I'm doing B or C, starts to change the mindset. I can do it, actually. So during World War II, St. Paul's Cathedral was symbolic. The Germans bombed St. Paul's Cathedral every night to bring it to the ground, because if you managed to bring it to the ground, the British would lose heart. The British put people up with sandbags on top of the cathedral for 4 straight years. And St. Paul's Cathedral stood, which makes all of London even today more expensive, because many points in London have to see some part of St. Paul's Cathedral. So the mindset really matters. The why really matters. And often the PM starts to inspire, starts to be that story and reason why the company exists, and becomes that central focal point. This was interesting. 1986, Javed Miandad hit a 6 in the very last ball. And for about 20 years, India was markedly worse than Pakistan in critical moments of cricket. 2005, Tendulkar, who's a generation later, didn't see any of this probably, and tremendously gifted. When he hit Abdul Qadir for, I think, 27 runs in 1 over. After that, when you do a before and after, these are like statistically different distributions. So how we change the mindset, those moments, defining moments, communicating it at scale becomes very important. When you have a mission statement, one suggestion, make it controversial. If you say something like, you should function with integrity, it's not enough. It's not memorable. It's obvious. Facebook had a mission statement, move fast and break things. No one wants to break things. But what it said is, if to move fast, you have to break things, do it. That was communicating something. What are the trade-offs being communicated through the rank and file makes for a very different outcome. Relentless communication about the outcome, about the successes, the reason why, and a customer-first communication from support to sales to everything. That this is what the customer is hoping, this is where we landed. It's not about blaming who internally. It's about doing what is right by the customer, especially in the growth phases of the company. This is very important. I have repeatedly found there are 2 ways to look at things. One is to say, if I don't know how to build it, I don't want to think about it. That is often the engineering mindset. I have grown up in engineering and I can relate to some of it. A complete reverse is saying, if it's not going to be interesting and amazing for the customer, even if you can build it, I don't care. So do you start with how you build it, or why or what you build? Probably the better place to start is uncompromisingly with why or what, and then see what we need to make it happen. So Steve Jobs has a very interesting answer, and I will try to find it. It was someone saying that his product was crushing open source and doing all things wrong, and he doesn't know what he's doing. And he had a very compelling answer. He thought about it for a minute or so, and he said, there are many things I don't know. But the most interesting question is not whether it did one thing right, but whether it can go to a billion and a 10 billion and 100 billion business. Excuse me. So if you can grow with it, and whether the message scales to a mainstream of market and solves something amazing, you can start with what the customer, how to build it, and whether you can achieve it, or even the impossible that the customer needs, and figure out how to get there. The latter usually wins. I will skip over scale. This is not sets of numbers I expect product managers to know. This is something for engineers, but I wanted to throw it in. I wanted to throw it in for how within engineering I like to look at things also. So this gives you some idea of latency. Imagine on paper, someone says, I'm going to make 5 round trips from San Jose to Amsterdam. It's going to be 150 milliseconds multiplied by 5 at a bare minimum. If he needs 500 milliseconds response time, it's not happening. You don't need to do that experiment. The easiest things are where the experiments are dirt cheap or not even needed. You have a priori data that it doesn't work. If you simply learn how to rule out bad ideas 2 orders of magnitude faster than others, you will be left doing more good things, a lot more than others. A more recent thing, with cloud, you should think about cost, your margin. Previously, you did not have as much of COGS. Cloud is not cheap. Amazon is running a business. So how to think about it, what margins do you get? You don't have to do all the computation, but encouraging the team. How much would you cost? I can sell this service, say for $4 a year to the customers. How much would it cost to serve one customer? If it's $1, starting to be high. Usually cloud COGS is about 15%. Engineering team, if you take the cost, it's about 20%. Sales plus marketing, maybe 40%. And another 15-20% is your profit. You will try to make that for the business. When you lead a change, there's a time to debate and a time to commit. Calling that out to the team. Good PMs build amazing informal networks through all kinds of ranks. It's not just about the formal weekly meetings, but they're grabbing lunches, dinners, coffee with a whole lot of people, from sales and marketing to customer support to engineering to customers. So they're constantly connected to all aspects of the ecosystem and nudging in different directions without direct reporting structures. These are about conditional commits and rejection criteria decided and discussed beforehand, sharing that this is what I'm trying to do. This is what I'm hoping will happen when you do this. It's inspiring. Relentless communication, good, bad, ugly, is an email that I share with my teams. Learning to disagree but commit, and connecting the story. Most people in the company are at the bottom of one or two things. They focus deeply on, say, scaling the database. As a PM, you are on top of many things. One specific demographic, which moves very successfully into product management oftentimes, is someone from testing. So engineering is focused on one key aspect, someone from testing starts to go across and do horizontal testing, they start to see the product end to end and will comment on things much better and will be able oftentimes to transition into this role. I will jump forward. One very good balance to maintain.
Ashok, we have time.
How do you make, we have some time?
Yes, we have some more time.
Okay, good. So the trade-off between control and chaos. Many mistake good management for complete control. Past playbooks, past ideas may need tweaking. Any hypothesis you have has to have a way to test for rejection criteria, whether it's correct, and moving forward. Inspiring is about communicating, sharing the context, giving the big picture, connecting the small work detailed work everyone's doing into the big picture. Relentless communication. So one story which I can give you, Walt Disney found that they were getting terrible NPS scores at Disneyland, net promoter scores. Then they started digging in. Turned out that end of the day, the kids have walked a lot, they're tired, parents have forgotten where they've parked the cars, and they have a very hard time finding the car because they've just forgotten. And then it was such a bad experience, it overshadows the whole day's good experience. So what did they start to do? The bus that picks you up from the parking lot now tells you 7 times. You are parked at Goofy parking lot number 5. Goofy parking lot number 5, 7 times, so that you will remember it. And that started to have a dramatic improvement. The important part is this relentless unifying communication. You cannot have shared vision without shared context. As a PM, are you able to convey that context? In the early days, being a PM is about making the right calls. In the later days, it's about making the right calls and inspiring a much larger team than you can grab lunch with regularly about that call. Written communication, verbal communication, all hands, blogs which support the view, why it's amazing, customer input. Suddenly, it starts to perpetuate and influence much better. Control and chaos are very different things. Do you run the business with complete control, Six Sigma reliability, or do you run it with chaos? Depends. Chaos often leads to a lot more innovation because it's a lot more minds crowdsource the thinking, while control leads to Six Sigma reliability. If you're at the beginning of a hockey stick, you go with a lot looser structure, more chaotic, but more throughput, versus a much larger company like an IBM or Microsoft, you want to proceed with some structure. Hiring philosophy. If you have a vision, you can hire brilliant people across the board, or you can hire complementarily flawed people. The best example I have is an example from basketball. Dennis Rodman, very flawed individual. But the amazing thing he did was elbowed everyone, bugged everyone. So even if your plan was to foul Jordan or Pippen, you just lost track of it. He was so supremely annoying, he could make you lose track of it. Any questions so far? Let me see, go back. Okay, can you please elaborate the metrics in the previous slide? Okay. Sai, can you type out which slide I will go back before I will go back? Okay, let's go back a bit. Sai, Kiran. These metrics, I guess. You can even type if you want.
Sai Kiran, you can speak also. I have unmuted you.
We are also in lockdown here, and my wife decided to do a barbecue. Unfortunately, it triggered my allergies, so I'm coughing a bit.
Thank God it is the allergy.
Yeah, thank God it's the allergies. Well, I have a lot of allergies, so
Yeah,
a
so
lot.
today people
But
are a little in the panic mode because just 5 minutes before this webinar started, the news came out.
okay,
Expecting more people to join, more registrations were there, but I think people are panicking and buying all things because it's 3 weeks lockdown.
I think you should buy, but I think this is also an opportunity to really focus and get the things we've wanted to do and not gotten done, get them done.
That's so true.
So, okay, Sai, I will move forward. I think it was this slide. These were metrics on latency. So a disk, which is 5,000 RPM, will take 12 milliseconds for one rotation. Why is it necessary? If someone says, I got 3 milliseconds for the query response, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You know that this data was held in memory. And that model will work only because they didn't have to do the disk seek, unless the disk was SSD. So just knowing these allows me to eliminate a whole lot of questions, a whole lot of unnecessary experiments. I had a slightly more dramatic ending planned. So I will play this. Let's see. This is the theme song for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Product management is actually all of it. It's a very intense role. It's non-trivial, and I believe it's actually one of the hardest jobs, and yet probably the most rewarding job. You start with the beginning, from the inception of the idea, take it through engineering, take it through GTM, relentless communication to early adopters on the one side, to the visionaries, to the mainstream market, which is more risk averse on the other. There is an element of absolutely relentless communication. Bringing people, it's often said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. It's not that simple to go together with 500 or 1,000 people. And yet, the product managers relentlessly manage to do that. It is communication at scale, building the structure, communicating over emails, over verbal, over all hands, over skipped levels, informal coffees, across every layer. You are the midfielder who will build the glue from the market to the GTM. There is always the good, the bad, and the ugly, but it's probably the most rewarding role. And you do get to general manager quite often. With that, I will pause and we'll take questions. Hope
Sure.
it was fun for you. Thank you. I actually drew on Good, Bad, Ugly theme song because I send out a Good, Bad, Ugly email to my teams.
Wow.
And not only to my teams, it goes out to the board, to our other teams, to my peer groups, and it helps communicate across the spectrum what we are doing together. Why are we one company? It's important and it's non-trivial.
Absolutely. I'll keep that in mind. And in these times, I think this kind of a communication is very essential.
Thank you. So let's go over the questions, jumping to the questions. How much skeptical are PMs regarding scaling of the product during GTM phase? How to overcome the skepticism? I think the big thing for skepticism, you should be skeptical, because oftentimes an engineer, the biggest thing they can do is being able to have the latest technology in the resume. And sometimes that gets the better of what is needed, and it's speculative generality or too complicated. There is such a thing as being overqualified. If you hire a rocket scientist to mow the lawn, you will find rockets in your lawn. So you have to right size the job to the aspirations of the people. So when you're a product manager, I think the big thing is what is the likely growth curve? And then nudging to test at that level. What would it take for things to work at that level? I'll give you a few examples. Often people go, okay, I'm using Hadoop and Cassandra to achieve this large volume. Okay, can you, before we write all the code, can you throw that data in Hadoop and run the Hive query and see if it comes back in the right time? We don't need all the code. We can just, or the database, we will have 10 billion rows and then they will respond in so many seconds. You don't have to write all the code. Encouraging people to think in terms of validating and de-risking their concerns is very important. How to overcome this kind of skepticism? I don't think we want to overcome the skepticism directly. We want to test and validate. So being skeptical of something is not a bad thing. In fact, if there's absolutely no conflict in some roles, I often say, you're adding nothing to my thinking. And that's probably true. If you've never given me an idea which is different from mine, you're not adding any value in addition to what I'm doing. Maybe you're just giving some work. So skepticism, the healthy push and pull between engineering and product are all needed. And being able to construct an ability for people to disagree constructively is very important so that people can debate you. Yeah. Did that answer the question, Sauradeep? Okay, I will move to Bala's question. If the tech team is not very inspired by the why and more focused on the how, what are the steps to convince? So I think it is two things. So first, if people were not very inspired on the why, sometimes context helps. That this is why we are here, this will create a great outcome. This is how you will get a great outcome. So what are great outcomes for engineers? The startup, if it grows, you will make $1 million. Sounds like a great outcome, okay? The startup, if it grows, you will get promoted 10 times as fast as if it didn't grow. I think growth is a big thing. Those are big things. Giving people the ability to experiment some time on something creative or guiding some creative innovation. For instance, if hypothetically you could do optical character recognition, it would cut costs by this much. Sounds interesting. The last option, I'm in a stage of business which is not super growth oriented. It's not super tech. We don't want to rewrite the code stack. Right size the people who will be interested in that role, because someone dramatically smart may not be very interested, and we are not going to invest that much more. So step one, context. Step two, context, impact to the world. Step two, impact to you as the engineer or engineering leader. Step three, financial motivations. Sometimes you can do things with bonus or whatever. Last step, swap to someone who will likely be more inspired. I'll give you an example, an accounting software company. It has a lot of computations. Calculations are not very hard. Someone with front end will enjoy because it's hard to express all these accounting details. But a lot of others will not. I think in those cases, hiring someone, say, with accounting background or MIS or MBA with some software starts to be interesting, because for them, they understand the money, the impact, and accounting software makes more sense. Where a PM is in need, while product idea is in design or at market ready stage or at growing customer base, I think varied across every layer. So initially, a PM is helping find segments. So as the market and the world evolves, you're unlikely to be successful across all segments. You will find some sub-segments, say high income people in US, or this much and males or females. You will start to sub-segment and do an amazing improvement for that sub-segment. So what is the size of the segment? What is the growth rate? What is the buying power? And what are the key pain points? Often for consumers, you will have a PM who can relate to it. For instance, if it's a woman-focused product, often a woman will make a great PM. Say she is into those products. So she doesn't have to guess, she is instinctively the target demographic. If it's a focus on, say, urban household, someone who's running in the urban household. However, if it's, say, in a remote village, none of you have been remote villagers, but you want to solve that problem. Then you need structure. Structure for customer advisory boards, partner advisory boards, remote village people who are on that advisory board guiding it. Okay, product managers should have technical skill. So technical skill is not about coding. I have seen product managers have no technical skill, amazing eyes and ears to the market. They're amazing eyes and ears because they're the market skill, they understand the domain, they understand the business. I was talking to a product manager in education technology. She has done a few startups, been CEO a few times. She has 25 years of experience in the space of education. So her Rolodex is about education, people in the education, universities, governments in education. Listen to her. She is recognized. She understands the domain exceptionally well. Her skill set is not Angular, JS, and React. So when you're a product manager, I think the most key skill set is prioritization, followed by communication. Segmentation, prioritization, communication. That would be my three things. And if to understand and communicate and relate to engineers, you have a little technical skill, sure, it helps. But even without it, you will not, instead of working really hard to impress on the technical skills, it's often better to impress on the functional skills where engineers really need the help. So I would focus there, being the eyes and ears to the market, understanding the business, understanding the segment, sitting with the engineers and inspiring them, explaining to them all those aspects, because you could do a good job with other aspects. It's just not as incrementally beneficial. Did I answer the question? Sorry, it was a bit long, probably. Any other questions? Let's see. Please elaborate market skills the PM needs. I think in terms of market skills, depends on the stage. So great presenter. Some PMs are almost mini evangelists, and some PMs become CTO oftentimes because they are more evangelizing. They have a huge number of Twitter followers, bloggers. So it's an outbound PM role, creating, okay, so one part is prioritizing what engineering builds. How should you showcase this product? You know how, say, the vacuum cleaners are being showcased. If you look carefully, there's a lot of thought that has gone in. How walk into a mall. If you have no allergies, you walk through different sections that actually smell different. The shelf, what is on the top shelf versus the bottom shelf versus the middle shelf. It's targeting the height of the person. Woman-centric products will typically be at a level of median woman's height. Male-centric products, median male height in the country. So it's very structured. It's very thought through. So I think the market skills, what should pre-sales demo? Is there a verticalization by industry? For instance, you demo this to healthcare companies and this way to banks. The PM is the master orchestrator. So you actually have more jobs than just sitting. And so I often say a weak product manager will become a program manager. That's a PM refusing to do their job. The job is very diverse. It's very expansive. You are the glue. You are the midfielder. You can sit on the defense with a 9 to 12 month horizon only, or sit on the offense, be with the pre-sales, know what the win-loss ratios, be with support, risk of churn, all of those. So the market-facing skills of a PM are extremely important. If anything, I would say even more important than engineering skills. My suggestion, to get the approval of a large engineering team, I would not say focus on just doing engineering. If you focus on the PM aspects, look for slots in all hands. Talk to the engineering counterpart. Influence this. So the reason CPO, okay, I'll give you an example. Often, I've never seen a chief product officer reporting into a chief technology officer, but I've often seen a head of engineering reporting into a chief product officer. The reason, the chief product officer understands the why and the how better than anyone else. Maybe less of the how, but more of the why. In a board meeting, most boards will talk to the CFO, how much money do you have, sales, how much money will you get? Then they'll talk to the CPO. The only time it comes to a technology officer is if one of the people deflects a question and says, okay, the CTO will handle it. So CPO is a very compelling role, Chief Product Officer. Did I answer the questions? Any other questions?
Thank you, Ashok. Any other questions from anyone? We can take a few more questions. If anybody has a question, please enter in the Q&A window. Looks like people are a little dull today.
Oh, it's okay. I totally understand. By the way, on coronavirus in general, staying at home, avoiding the contact, I don't know how much you've read.
Yeah.
It's droplets based. So avoid being in, the masks do help because the droplet doesn't come into your breathing stream. Wash your hands often. You don't always need the hand sanitizing alcohol. Washing it often will help.
So, we have got a few more questions.
All right. Did we? What is win-loss analysis? Very good questions. Um, so win-loss analysis is look at sales. So when I run engineering meetings, if you run engineering meetings, it's very rah. We are the best. We did it all. We've nailed it. And it's good. However, when you bring in pre-sales, if you're the best, you should be winning every deal. Are you? Suddenly, now pre-sales, sales is also very optimistic. They'll be hesitant. But if you nudge people, people send win emails because they're positive. Win is basically, I won against competitor X. Say my product beat Microsoft and Apple and sold my new laptop, okay? Or my new OS. Great. Now, win-loss analysis is more about the loss analysis and not giving bogus. So there's a very strong tendency in loss analysis to say, oh, the customer was stupid. If there are enough stupid customers, you would be stupid to ignore that stupidity of the customer. They're your customers. So even if they're stupid, you have to win. What are you going to do with the new fact that you're targeting a very stupid base of customers? So that relentless focus, driving that is important. Calling customers stupid or something is unproductive. And yet I see that often. It's like, yeah, what is your plan? How will we measurably change the trajectory? Sometimes you say, I believe this is a complete one-off and this will not happen again because blah, 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 blah. And then you keep an eye that it's not happening again. How do you upgrade with the latest technology? You don't always upgrade first with the latest technology. The right thing to think is, how will it help my customers if I do upgrade, don't upgrade? How will it help the market? How will it help the market perception and analysts? Can I lead with front-end changes, which is a facade over the back-end with cloud and microservices? You may not need to upgrade. I'll give you another example. Someone I know started a business. They thought they could do a combo of shaving and blah, 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 4 or 5 things and make it very interesting. They didn't manufacture anything. They just put up a website and bought these things, put it into different decorative boxes and shipped it out. The point of the matter is not how they will make it. Is it interesting if hypothetically it was made? So on the upgrades to the latest technology, a good PM knows how to ask questions and also starts to learn how to make an answer seem like someone else's. So even though your idea was this, instead of you saying the idea, can you nudge others to bring that up as their idea? That's a powerful question. So we don't always upgrade with the latest technology. A lot of the biggest products are still on very old. I'll give you an example. American Express still runs mainframe. Sabre for airline reservations still runs mainframe. It's as legacy as it gets, but it's okay. It's doing their business. And maybe the risk reward is just not there. So look at Sharpe ratio. I will type it here. Can I type it? I think I have to answer live or something like that. No? I don't think I can. Can I? No. I'm not sure if I can. Okay. Satya asked to become a CXO. I think I may have deleted Satya's question. What was the full question? Sorry, can you retype it, Satya?
Or I can unmute you. Satya, you can ask your question. Satya Natarajan, right? Please unmute yourself and you can talk. Satya, can you hear me? Satya Natarajan, you can unmute yourself and talk.
Oh,
We should just...
I cannot see it. I don't think he's able to talk.
Okay.
Oh, a customer support experienced professional transitioning into a PM role. What critical competencies? Excellent question. If you're moving from customer support to a CXO, customer success is actually not a bad track to grow up on. Only thing that the person lacks, so he clearly knows how to interact with customer. If you, customer success, chief customer success officer knows how to build. So the immediate adjacency is professional services if your product needs installation services. Then you go more into sales and move backward bit by bit into engineering. You actually already know a lot of the engineering if you ran customer success. So it's not a bad area. The key thing as customer success, you're often very short-term view, which is very important because you cannot take long-term to fix your customer issue. They hate you then. How to balance the short with the long. We all grow up wearing these lenses based on which jobs we grew up from. So Satya, as a customer success, you are growing up with a high adrenaline, great polish, great customer communication and interaction, and you can go to a customer success officer if you straight on your track without doing anything else. And with SaaS and subscription, you will be more important because SaaS and subscription is more like continuous sale. So I think that works. If you want to go to CPO or something like that, then you walk through sales as an adjacency and you walk through other areas. Okay. Oh, you can absolutely transition. Yeah. So your organization most likely already has a customer success officer. And this is increasingly valued in SaaS subscription. So take an interest in PM in the prioritization. Customer success already connects with the product management team on prioritizing fixes. Ask them what else they're doing. That's a more central role. CPO is more central than customer success officer. But you know probably more engineering than anyone except engineering because customer support often takes fixing issues quite deeply. Oh, you will need competitive analysis. So pre-sales is very good at competitive analysis. Customer success currently doesn't have to do competitive analysis. Your post-sale activity. Build up competitive analysis on a slightly longer range view, and you're there. While the answer is in every stage, I think it allowed the discussion on how situational this material is. I also, yeah. So which stage, what? This allowed a lot of elaboration into how the product manager's job, you're in the same role, the company is just moving, and at different stages, very different demands of you. And if you don't grow up to that very quickly, you're a bad PM and everyone starts to hate you. I think many of the questions were good, actually. How to reduce the friction? How technical do you get? That's a good question. Win-loss analysis was good. Staying on top of tech. Even the CXO question was very good. But probably the stages and how situational, how different it is lost. It's like, oh, you are CPO. Sounds great. Suddenly, it's like, which stage of company are you? It's a very different job. though you have the same title, it's a very different job. In the early stages to a little later stage, how structured, how you build the org, how you communicate, very, very different as you go along in the stages.